I'm Mar, and this is my opinion. One of the most prolific writers of modern time, adaptations of Stephen King's work are very hard to pull off. While shorter works such as Carrie and Misery can be translated from one media to the other without much substance being lost in translation, longer works such as The Stand are troublesome. Therefore, these works were adapted as network television miniseries. This allowed the works to be adapted without having to seriously abridge the story, but TV standards and practices necessitated the editing of explicit content. Released in 1990, Stephen King's It was one such miniseries. Based on King's lengthy love letter to H.P. Lovecraft, the miniseries centered around a group of children who are being terrified by a supernatural entity that takes the form of a clown. The seven stand against this clown, who goes by the name Pennywise, and seemingly defeat him with their innocent faith. This victory lasts several decades, but Pennywise returns and resumes his spree of child murders. Now grown, the seven must return home and put evil back in its place, this time without the innocence and imagination of childhood. Before I delve too deeply into the sewers, I must address length. Told in two parts, most of the novel's 1,000-page plot was abridged, while other elements were discarded for length and content. Despite this, the plot unfolds nicely and is faithful to its source material. My only major complaint is that certain elements in the second half are brought up in a confusing manner, but considering the nature of human memory, especially that of the Losers Club, it fits. While there were several scenes that I would have liked to see adapted to TV, the smoke circle and macroverse, this falls to the nitpick level, especially when one considers how high the budget would need to be at the time to properly convey the latter. While an old complaint, this point must be reiterated again. It, a 1,000-page novel, received two parts, yet several years later The Shining, a 400-ish page novel, received four. What in the blue hell? King really must have wanted to stick it to Kubrick to do this. Even the Stand miniseries was a four-parter, although in its defense, it didn't come out until after it. Tommy Lee Wallace wrote and directed the film, with Lawrence Cohen collaborating on the former. Known for working with John Carpenter, Wallace brought a technical sophistication to the miniseries. This is most evident during its POV shots, which utilize the dolly crane being pushed through piping. Not Halloween 3 level, but effective. Although he enjoyed the experience, Wallace hasn't felt shy about speaking out how his work could have been improved. Wallace felt that more material from the novel could have been adapted, and if the production had more money, he would have been able to film the climax as originally envisioned, although it wouldn't have been as grandiose as the Macroverse's Ritual of Chud. Wallace also would have improved Part 2's story, as he felt the adults weren't as magnetic to watch as their child counterparts. While I understand his view, I don't agree 100%. While the adults might not have the same energy when they go into the sewers, they have a chemistry. Perhaps another rewrite could have perfected it further. Wallace also wasn't a fan of Audra's fate upon arriving in Derry, as he felt it undermined her character to shift from a heroine to a catatonic damsel in distress. Although I understand, I respectfully disagree with his assertion. It shows what happens to an average person when one stares deep into the deadlights. As with Lovecraft, the price of cosmic knowledge is insanity. Richard Bellis composed the score. Best known for Star Tours and a handful of Olsen Twins films, Bellis's score brings the right amount of creepy nostalgia to the miniseries. It makes one reminisce about the good times while putting one on edge. It's easily the one department where the miniseries wins out over the theatrical film. The adult and child casts both perform adequately, each capturing their character's essence while allowing the audience to see how 30 years brings about change. John Ritter, Jonathan Brandis, and Seth Green stand out to me. This is one of Seth's early roles, and while young, Richie doesn't have much character, especially when compared to the novel. He plays what little there is convincingly. Ritter and Brandis outshine him. Their characters are further fleshed out, and they give an impressive performance. It's also sad that both died young, which is why they stand out collectively to me. The supporting cast each perform well, with Frank C. Turner standing out. He plays the perfect overprotective ass. Jared Blancard is also good, but his character lacks depth, especially when compared to the novel, where several scenes are from his point of view. While he may be a by-the-books archetypical bully, you understand why given his backstory. Although they perform well, each is eclipsed by Tim Curry. Although initially reluctant to accept the role due to the makeup involved, Curry gives a memorable performance as Pennywise the Dancing Clown, ranging from over the top hilarious to menacing. In fact, Curry was so into character during filming that most of the actors avoided him on set, and he legitimately scared Tony Dakota during their scene. His response was simple: "Gee, I'm so sorry, but that's what I'm supposed to be doing, and you're supposed to be scared." It's a classic response no matter the vocal inflection. The special effects are impressive for a miniseries, although certain aspects have aged. Pennywise's projected image and claymation leap stand out, although in fairness the latter has a charm and Wallace hated the former even in 1990. Spider has its moments, although certain shots look better than others. As an aside, some might be disappointed by Pennywise's true form, but it works for me. While it loses a cerebral edge due to the macroverse being cut, it still retains a Lovecraftian quality, with the deadlights and Audra becoming catatonic. Pennywise's final death is also faithful to the novel, although scaled back because of the budget. Nevertheless, it's creatively shot, leaving much to the imagination. Before it, blood in TV products was rare, so the scene with blood oozing over Georgie's photo paved the way for future shows and films to push the envelope. One big positive. Premiering on November 18th, it was the fifth highest rated program that day, pulling in an 18.5 rating, which equates to about 17.5 million homes. Part 2 drew even higher ratings on Tuesday, pulling in a 20.6 thanks to 19.2 million homes. Very respectable numbers for a heavily abridged adaptation. One interesting thing to note is its home video release, as there are two tape and single tape versions. I own the latter, although my high school cinema's literature teacher recommended the two-tape version for quality purposes. Having not watched that version, I can't report what the differences are, but if I were to hazard a guess, I would say the sound and video quality are crisper. It just seems to make more sense considering that it's spread across two VHSs instead of crammed onto one. The whole LP versus EP recording methods. While not the best adaptation of King's work, it makes the best of its two parts, introducing the audience to relatable characters, a tense situation, and justifying clown hysteria. Never said it was my phobia.